What's up guys, Enrique here from Novation, and you are tuning into another Beats and Bytes, and this time it's about sequencers. So let's go ahead, jump right in, get started. This one of course is about sequencers. As you can see, we got 4 sequencers here, and basically they are all they essentially want to do the same thing, but they all do things a little differently. So looking at circuit monostation, this guy here is a monophonic sequencer, but this guy's really powerful because it technically has 3 sequencers within it. You got oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and the mod sequencer. Sorry about our Novation cat if you hear it meowing in the background. And the sequencer inside monostation is really cool because, again, like I said, it does 3 things. We got MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2, and then a CV and gate sequencer. On circuit, on the other hand, we got 2 sequencers. 6-note polyphonic sequencer for synthesizer 1 on MIDI channel 1, and a 6-note polyphonic sequencer on synth 2. So an easy way to really kind of take advantage of these is in the mixer, I could just turn down the volume so I don't hear the synth engine inside a circuit, and I just use it as a sequencer. The cool thing with both of these is that they got scale mode, a bunch of different scales, and a bunch of unique ways of how to enter in notes into the sequence. And for those of you guys who don't even know what a sequencer is at all, basically all a sequencer does and wants to do is play notes for your other synthesizers. So in this case, we got circuit basically being the synth sequencer for the DO5 and the analog 4. So you can see that my mixer volumes are turned down, right? On synth 1, it's MIDI channel 1. That's the analog 4. Synth 2 is the DO5. Right, so it's really cool. Basically, a great thing about sequencers is that they just free up your hands to actually perform and do a lot of other things. And for those of you who are really good at playing notes and playing the piano and whatnot, if it has a MIDI cable or a MIDI jack on the back of it, you can actually send MIDI out of that into circuit and hit record on circuit and play your keyboard as you would and have all the notes be recorded into the sequencer. So that's pretty much it when it comes to sequencers. They all vary really, because like for example, even between our 2 products here, they both have the Novation circuit style sequencer, but we have a bunch of different options. For example, on our circuit monostation, if I go to another session, let's say this one here, and I turn down the volume of circuit and mute everything as well, I press play here, you can see our notes kind of going forward. I can say, oh, I like that note. Let me put that down a couple times. I like this note. I'm gonna put that down here and there. Right, it's a really simple way, but the cool thing here is I got pattern settings. I can speed up the tempo, or basically the sync rate in this case. So instead of playing on 16th notes, it's on 30 seconds. I can then do like a ping pong forward and back. So now it's going backwards. And now back to forward. I can do something called random, which is of course just random notes. Or I can say just plain reverse. Or just play forward. So this has a bunch of different settings. You can even set start and end points, maybe start there, end here. Start here, end there. So the circuit monostation has a bunch of those things, but the cool thing with all those pattern settings is because it's MIDI or CV and gate, you can actually send those same settings and notes and sequences out to other gear. Circuit, on the other hand, you got a couple other different things. So if I go ahead and go to another blank session here on the monostation, and we go and listen to circuit, turning its volume up. Let's see, I have it right now, let's say this pattern, which is playing the analog 4. I press play, I can hit record and just throw in some notes, doesn't really matter. And then of course unmute it so we can hear it. So this is playing the analog 4. But I got things like length, so I can actually shorten the length here. Maybe just do a weird 7-step. And then I can even nudge things around. So I can see that this one is off by 1 step. I can put the whole sequence on there. And then maybe bring everything back. You know, take out something so we can kind of give it some context, like drums, which circuit has. Right? It's simple. really simple, easy way to kind of get some stuff going within a setup. So with that being said, the Analog 4 does have a sequencer as well. It's 4 notes polyphony and whatnot, and you can do a lot of cool things with that as well. But the speed of which we can do things on the circuit, it's pretty quick and pretty fast. And there's also a pretty basic sequencer on the DO5 as well that some people have used. So, you know, take it or leave it. It kind of depends on what style of sequencing you like. I mean, particularly, I really like the sequencer on circuit, especially with the 1.7 update. It's added a lot of really, really cool features. So with that, let me save this song because maybe I'll want to go back to that and play it again later. If we focus on circuit 1.7 and circuit itself, what some of the new features are have basically been things that a lot of people have been asking for, like being able to tie notes longer than a bar or being able to play patterns non-sequentially. So before, check this, if I do a simple pattern, let's say this here, easy. And if I go to this pattern, right now we're on pattern 1, the one that's flashing. If I go to pattern 2 and I play this, there shouldn't be anything there. But let's say I duplicate pattern 1 onto pattern 2 and I add some more notes at the end. So we'll say drum 2, I'll put a little lower hit and then duplicate that, right? And then we'll say drum 1, we'll take this one out and do this. So before, all I could do to kind of add these two together was to press them together and it would play from pattern 1 to pattern 2, pattern 1 to pattern 2, sequentially, in that order. Right, simple. But how can we really like flesh this out and make it something even better? Say I wanted to play pattern 1 3 times and then pattern 2 on the 4th to kind of give it some variation at the end. We can now do that. All I'd have to do is hold down shift and basically say, what pattern do I want to play? So starting on pattern 1, holding down shift, I can say play pattern 1. Oops, I hit it too many times. Play pattern 1, 1, 1. And you can see here with these LEDs how many times we've entered in a pattern into its 32 possible points of data of what pattern is going to play next. So we got 3 of pattern 1, and then the 4th one's going to be pattern 2. So simple, if I press play, you can see now we're on the 2nd turn, 3rd turn, and now 4th, which is the change up. And then back to the other one. Really, really cool. But the cool thing here is you can see that the LEDs are orange, signaling that we're only editing drum 1 and 2's basically pattern chain. And if I go to drum 3 and 4 and do something similar here, let's say this, easy. And then I can say duplicate that onto pattern 2, go to pattern 2, and we'll edit this a little bit. Let's add some of these notes. Cool. So now let's do something weird. Instead of doing your typical 4, 8, 16, 32 type of style of sequencing, let's kind of do a weird kind of polyrhythm, I guess you can call it. I'll say play pattern 1 of drum 3 and 4 twice, and then play pattern 2 once, and then 1 and 2. So now we got a chain of 5 playing alongside drum 1 and 2's chain of 4. So listen to this. You hear it forever kind of changing. And then it's going to go back into the other one. So this is a simple way to add a lot of variation to your music. Easy peasy. A lot of this stuff too, again, is powerful because it sends this note data out to other synthesizers. And if I'm going too fast or anything like that, don't hesitate to leave any questions or anything like that in the comment section. We'll get to them as we go, and there's also a Q&A at the very end, so if we don't get to it right away, we'll get to it by the end. Another cool thing about 1.7 is the ability to tie notes. So leaving that drum sequence there, I'm going to go ahead and slow down the tempo, which is tied to the circuit monostation, so we'll say 110. Going over to our synthesizers, I want to turn down the synth volume of the internal synthesizers within circuit. Looking at synth 2, let's see, synth 1. Cool, so here, this is a perfect example. Say I like this note, right? On the very first step, I'm going to put down a chord. And I'm going to say gate. The gate is going to be how long this note is held open. 16 steps. You can hear that it's just going to keep re-triggering itself, right? So if I go and I duplicate this pattern from pattern 1 over to pattern 2, and we tie those two together, same thing's going to happen. I want this to play for 2 bars, not 1. But currently, if you have 1.6, this is going to happen. It's going to re-trigger that note again. But the cool thing here is if I go onto pattern 1 within 1.7's update and I go to the gate again, if I hold down shift, we now have a couple more options. This is really cool. We can take the note itself and actually shift it off of the 1 like you can do with the drums and make sure that it kind of gives it a little bit more life. It's not so robotic. But the very last button here, this is going to be basically what's going to tie your note into the next bar, whatever note is there. So because the next pattern that we're going to tie to the end of this pattern has the same exact note starting right at the beginning, it's going to sustain this note over into the next section. So listen to this now. We'll tie those two together. Pattern 1 has that new note basically tying at the very end, so listen to this. And it's going to repeat itself. But if you want to get really weird, you can then go into gate and tie the second pattern as well, so this will just tie itself indefinitely as long as your synthesizer's sustain is turned up. And it'll just keep going. And you can go and start doing some cool things. And then you can use something like scales to change the root note. And it'll just tie itself again. And then back. Oh, I hit it a little too late. There we go. So with the 1.7, basically now you got non-sequential pattern chaining, you got the note tying, and then you can also move the notes off of the 1 for the synthesizers as well. Because normally before you can only do that with the drums. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, let me go ahead and clear this pattern out. Focusing on drum 3 and 4, if we do ta 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 ta, and it's just a simple kind of like metronome hit, doing the same thing, hitting gate, you can see that this one here is flashing. I can say on this step, instead of being perfectly on, be a little late. Or really late. And then maybe I like that, just duplicate that one around a little. Or another thing that's cool with the drums is you can actually re-trigger them. Kind of do like a more ratchety sound. So taking some off, adding multiple triggers to a single step. Basically what this is you got 6 micro steps between each of the 16 steps in any given pattern. So let's see. After that, basically with 1.7, that's the new features that we've added here. And from there, we're gonna go into sequencing for sound design. So you may have seen me do a little bit of it already, which is basically why a sequencer is so powerful. And again, this is like pretty much applies to all sequencers, but there's a lot of cool features within Circuit Sequencer that's really cool. For example, if we go to another blank session and I turn these down, all we're gonna listen to is the analog 4 sequenced by Circuit. I can go and build chords on Circuit to then play my analog 4. So check this out. I can say on the very first step, let's design a 4-note chord. Maybe lower. Easy, right? So cool. I can say hold that again for 8 steps. So if I press play on here, let's go ahead and slow that down. So let's build another chord. We got that one there. Let's say here we'll play. I know I shouldn't get too sucked into this. Okay, that one's cool. 4 steps. Actually, another thing that's cool is if you tap the last step, it'll like kind of micro shorten it a little bit to make it not be perfectly all the way through to the final step. So it's kind of like 3.5 steps instead of 4. And we'll add one last chord. Okay, that's cool. 3 steps. So if I press play, let's slow that down even more. So this one I wanted to go for 4. So cool. We have a simple pattern and I got both hands. I don't have to keep playing this over and over again. So now I can go into analog 4 and start editing the sound a little bit. Go over to my amp, give it some more attack. Some reverb. Go to the amp envelope. Oh man, this is awesome. Change up my filter type. Actually, you know what? I like that low pass. I got low pass too. There it is. Oh, this is... And then the other thing that's cool too is like, this is again on pattern 1. If I went on to pattern 8, this is one of my favorite things to do, and I hit mute, we're no longer transmitting MIDI from circuit sequencer to our final destination, which in this case is the analog 4. But I can go on to each step and build a chord. So let's just build really quick chords. Turn the filter up a little bit. And then let's see, say here. And then, man, I might have to pick up an analog 4. Let's see, resin. Cool. So watch this. I'm gonna go ahead and put down a simple drum beat again, and so while that's playing, you can see that our steps are going across here on synth 1, but they're not actually triggering our synthesizer because it's muted. But the cool thing is, if you were to press the keys on here directly, it would play the synth, right? But the cool thing is we've built chords ahead of time on the sequencer, and I can actually press those and edit them, but it kind of tricks it into just playing it. So watch this. Wait for it. And there's actually a way to record what I'm doing now into Circuit Sequencer, but it's like, it was never designed to do that, but somehow we found a way. I don't know who figured it out and how the heck they figured it out, but you can do it. So if this is something that you really like doing it as a chord designer, if you figure that way out, it's super simple. Or no, it's not simple at all. I completely lied. It's pretty complicated, but the fact that it can do that is really cool. So with sound design, like the ability to kind of free up your hands and stuff like that is, I mean, to have two hands and do two things on a synth is the whole reason we use hardware, right? I mean, the whole reason people sound design in a DAW, it's a little bit more limiting. Sure, you can get a MIDI controller, but again, it's so you can use two hands. So having a sequencer to be able to do that for you is incredible, that you can actually go in, play something like what we had earlier, this guy here, unmute it. Right, simple. Let's go ahead and duplicate that pattern over twice. Let's actually, you know what, let's turn this kind of into a song and let's show kind of the quick, simple powers of a sequencer and how to use it as a performance. So with Circuit and its 1.7 update, we can now play things non-sequentially. So we got this simple pattern here, which is, of course, what you just heard. And right now, if I go to scales, we're in a C minor. Let me make sure I'm in a C minor here as well. Cool. Do we got anything in this pattern? No. So I'm gonna press play on Circuit Mono Station. And this sequence here of gear, all the main master clock is circuit monostation. We're going MIDI out of here into the MIDI input of circuit, and that's it, just clock duties. From there, circuit is taking its transport controls and its MIDI clock data and sending also the note data of synthesizer 1 and 2 to the rest of the chain, which from here it's going into analog 4, and then we're using the MIDI through, which is basically a doubled or normal version of whatever's coming into the input, and that's going over to the DO5. Right now, MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2. This is, I don't know what MIDI channel it is on, but it doesn't really matter because it's just sending clock. And this is again doing basically the same thing. So pressing play here, you can see that everything starts going, right? So let's change up this last chord here a little bit. Turn down our filter a little bit. Cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and tie myself a 4-bar pattern here. So there it's easy, it's going 1, 2, and then 3, cool, and then this is pattern 4, and I hope I play some good notes. The LFO to our filter real quick. Cool, simple. So we got that pattern, which is the change up of the first pattern, which is this one. So let's say I want to play this one 1, 2, 3 times, and then this one the 4th time. And then I'll duplicate drum 1 pattern over to drum 1 and 2's second pattern. We'll go there. Let's put some kick drums in. Let's change it. Let's do the same for drum 3 and 4. Pattern, duplicate that over here, and let's see what we got in here. So now we're on pattern 2 for drum 3 and 4. Cool, so we can actually go ahead and kind of set this up in some sort of a song mode, if you will. Basically what it's doing, we can say, cool, for synth 1, play pattern 1, 2, 3, 1, da, 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 da. So it's gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for the drums, we can say pattern, play this one, this one, this one, this one, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and go to da, 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 da. So this one, we have pattern 2 basically playing, if my math is correct, on the 5th pattern through the 16th pattern chain, basically. So it's going to play this one 4 times, and then this one 5 through 16 times. And we can do the same for drum 3 and 4, but let's do this one a little differently to give ourselves more movement through the song so it doesn't sound as stagnant. So I'm going to say, play pattern 1, 3 times, and then we'll play this one 4 times. So it's a total of 7 times, which should take a really long time to add up to basically the same 8, 16, 32 again. With that, just go ahead and press play. And we got our 4-bar pattern going on circuit monostation, because this one cannot do the non-sequential pattern chaining, but you do get 16 bars, which is double what you get on circuit. So pressing play, let's see what we got. So if I'm not mistaken, and then the kick drum should come in. There it is, easy. And I'm only using the top row, like, hold on, let me pause this. This is crazy because I'm only using 2 patterns of each section. Like this is, when 1.7 came out, this is why I was so excited. I can actually take this live and use this on stage because I'm not stuck to doing any of this. If I wanted to do what I just did with drum 1 and 2 before on 1.6, I'd have to have the same pattern go across 4 patterns, and then pattern 2 be 5, 6, 7, 8, and tie that together, and that was it. I had nothing else. Now I can go and make some random fill. Let's see. Da, 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 da. I can do whatever. Let's just do this. Sure. So now I can go play pattern 1, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, da, 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 and then weird fill. Easy. So now we'll press play. Of course, it's going to take a while to get there, so let me just go ahead and play something on the DO5. And then kick drum. Pause it because the weird fill should come in, I think, right here. Oh, how far off am I? Oh, one more. All right, a little slower. And then back to no kick, breakdown. And then kick drum. And this is just within a session. You got 32 sessions, and all the sessions save your pattern chains and whatever you have set up, basically like your whole song. And then when you're ready to jump over to another song, that pattern chain will start going, because I've just saved this with this pattern chain in mind. And again, if you have any questions, or if none of this makes any sense to you guys, by all means. Cool, we got one question in right now asking if 1.7 is stable and if there are any bugs. As of right now, I haven't found a single bug. Even from the first version that they sent out for us to test as beta, there was nothing wrong within it. If anything, there's cool things, like there's weird tricks, and I don't want to say Easter eggs because I shouldn't, because it's not what it is or what it was meant to do. But you can do some weird stuff within the pattern chaining and finding out new ways to kind of like loop itself and play itself using the scale mode and the transposition. But as far as your question, which pertains to bugs or anything like that, none at all. You have complete confidence in updating your circuit. And of course, you know, just as a precautionary measure, as with anything, if you're updating your iPhone, you would back it up before you do. Do the same with circuit components, one click away. Next question we got is how to pan drums and synth. So this was, I want to say this was introduced in 1.6 or 5, possibly. But really simple. If we have everything right now running in stereo, which I'm pretty sure we do, in your mixer mode right here, if I press play, and we listen to that single 8th hi-hat, right? That's drum number 3. You can see now that our pattern buttons inside the mixer window have illumination. So I can go over to page 2, and this is now left or right for the hi-hats. And I can do the same. So I can put my snare a little to the left, but the delay is a little bit more ping-pongy, so it might still kind of hear it on both sides. And then basically peak is right, cyan or teal is left. So that's how you would pan your drums. Let's see what pattern we got going on here. So I'm gonna pause and bring it all back in. Cool. So we got another question and basically saying, can you turn sequence notes on and off? Basically, what I think you're asking is basically these notes here. If I can say this note, I no longer want it, right? So if that's the case, you would have to build a pattern with that note not in there. You can't turn off a note within a sequence. You can only turn off notes or sequences as a whole. Like, so basically I can then just mute what's going to the analog 4, right? Or I can go to patterns and duplicate that down and this one down, tie those two together, And then maybe this last one, I can just duplicate it there and then clear it out. So you'll see when it comes back around, it's no longer there anymore. So as far as turning off a note specifically within a sequence, no, you cannot. And basically when it comes to trying to make a sequence or like a collection of sounds and patterns and stuff for a live setup, you normally, majority of the time, people think of it in like, 4 bars or 8 bars or 16 or 32, just because it's kind of easy to count with and keep up, and a lot of music is kind of played that way. So when doing stuff, try to do stuff within a measure of 8 or 4, and it'll kind of help you remember where to put a breakdown in or where to take the kick drums out and stuff like that. We got another question in this time. Is there a way to make circuit sound less glossy, more distorted? There definitely is, but it would pertain a little bit more to the synth editor. So the synth itself, for example, these drums, if I wanted these to get super gnarly, right, I can then just go to each drum section, and for example, that little hi-hat, I can turn up the distortion, and maybe even lower its pitch. And then the last knob is super overlooked. A lot of people don't mess with this, but it's kind of like a tilting EQ, or like a shelf almost. Basically, if I tilt it or turn it to the left, it's only gonna let the lows show through, and if I go to the right, it's gonna cut a lot of the lows out and leave a lot of the highs. Throw a little reverb on this. And as far as the synth sounds, if that's what you're asking, there are, I want to say 2, possibly 3 types of distortion. And oh, you know what it is? I think it's 2 types of distortion, and one of them you can actually change what type of distortion. We got like clipper, a diode, like a rectifier type of distortion within the circuit sequencer, or within the circuit synth editor, and that also pertains to components. And the cool thing there is you can actually set up one of the knobs of the 8 macro controls that you have on here to be that final thing. So usually I do attack, release, and then attack, release for like the filter, or I'm sorry, filter, cutoff, attack, release, and then these 3 are kind of like random, and then the last one's usually an effect, like a chorus. So any of these 3 knobs you can easily set to be that distortion. Or the cool thing is with the macro knobs, they can do up to 4 different things at once, or 4 different destinations. You can set those destinations forward and backwards. And the cool thing is you can even say, cool, have this be the chorus amount up until 12 o'clock, and then past 12 o'clock be how much distortion it is. And you can even say, maybe after that point, turn the chorus back down. So it's almost like a dual effect knob in a weird way. So that's the cool thing with the macro knobs. Oh, and I think we got another. Nope, no questions, none whatsoever. Let me get back to this fat beat. And again, you got mixer controls, like, so I'm like really clipping this hi-hat really hard, right? But I can just turn it down as a whole within the mixer, so we can get like really crunchy, but bring it back down. So if I go to drum 1, same thing. And then bring it down in the mixer. Another question right now, this one's a pretty important one. Basically, can you change the MIDI notes for the drum output? So by default, all of circuit's MIDI channels, synth 1, MIDI channel 1, synth 2, MIDI channel 2, and that's across all the notes. I want to say it's 6 octave, it might be more. The drum section, if I hit shift and note, I can actually play these notes independently. Right, simple. But the one thing you cannot do on circuit's drum section is change what notes these 4 get sent out on. So I want to say it's C, D, E, and F, or C, C sharp, D, D sharp, one of those settings. Of course, C0, center piano, but you cannot actually change what note they are being sent out on. For example, what MIDI channel, they're always going to be on MIDI channel 10, and you cannot change what specific note within a piano or a keyboard roll is going to be sending out. So with all that being said, that's pretty much the power of sequencers, the power of circuit sequencer, the monostation sequencer, why they're beneficial, why everybody needs a sequencer. I was thinking about this the other day. Like this is kind of a weird thing, but because circuit's battery powered, whenever I go to buy a synthesizer that's a rack mount, like a JV1080 or a TX81Z, basically I could take circuit, plop it on wherever, plug a MIDI cable into the back and actually play the synth to make sure it still works. Like something as simple as that, to have this tiny pocket-sized thing, oh, maybe not a pocket, maybe a coat pocket, big coat, extra large. You could just like take this around, have your songs, have your sequences on there, ready to go. You can use it as a sketch pad, put some notes down here. You can use it as a chord designer, like we did on this last bank here. And we just put, and use that and play that into another sequencer. For example, the analog 4 sequencer. If I press play here, and I record this, you can hear it now. See what I'm saying? Like I can have a chord set up here beforehand and play it into electron sequencer. This is how I use it to write weird acid bass lines. I'll play chords even though the bass line is monophonic, and it'll start pulling its voice back and forth. Basically with sequencers you could do a lot, and you can especially sequence stuff. So with all that being said, I'm Enrique from Novation. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll have another one of these next month as always. Stay tuned. Check out our website for more information. And yeah, I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.